Well, the child gets a mixed message, I think, and they see, well, maybe my mother and father aren't right. Maybe Grandma and Grandpa are right. And if I just stay stubborn and hold out a little bit longer, maybe my parents will come around to see Grandma's view and anything goes. You know, my parents will then let me do anything. So I think it is important that there's good communication between grandparents and parent, and that there's a same wavelength, that there's an agreed upon punishment maybe for behavior that's unacceptable. And then the child gets this, whoa, everybody thinks the same, maybe I better not do this. I think that's important.
Yes, absolutely. Just like husbands and wives have to learn how to communicate with one another, say the hard things as well as the easy things. The same thing is true between the grandparents and the parents of these new little children. You have to talk about this disciplinary thing. What should the program be? What do you do? What do you expect me to do? What do you want me to do?
Communication seems
so
like so important across the board. You know, I was thinking too how things probably haven't changed so greatly in the sense if we go back to our early American, our frontier days when there was an extended family probably living in the same house and the same farm, and mom and dad might be out working together in the field, and the grandparents would be in with the children doing less heavy manual work, but sharing the parenting experience with their children and their grandchildren. And so we seem to have come, you know, like from there to when we were parents, and probably in the main, the mother was home with the children, the father was the sole provider, worker outside of the home for the money earning. And now we've kind of come back to maybe where we were 200 years ago. I hope that parents today, though, won't just work for what they perceive as necessities, even though they may be luxuries. I think if fathers have to work an extra 10 hours so they can have a sit-down lawnmower instead of a push lawnmower, or a medium or high-priced car instead of a low-priced, smaller car, you know, if there's so much work going on for money, for perceived necessities, which really are luxuries, and it will be better time spent at home with family than working for a luxury. And I think I don't want to dent our economy. I know our economy has problems, but I think that's very important for parents to really think about how much money they need and how much work they have to do, and not get lost in working too hard for luxuries. And
I think we can help the young people in that regard make those decisions without even talking about it by complimenting them on the well-being of their child, thanks to the fact that they are home, or they are home as much as they can be home, or that the father is involved in the child care, or the mother is you know, receptive to the thoughts of, you know, this, that, or the other. I think it's really a reinforcement that we can provide that makes their values pretty much in line with the values maybe that you had bringing up your own family. And just to go for a minute to Frank's thing about the weekends, you know, I think we think as grandparents about when we're taking care of the children. I don't think that has as much contribution to make to your young family as it does to be all together and quite unwittingly contributing to each other on a Saturday or a Sunday, specifically having to do with when the family pulls in the yard, go and greet them. You know, don't sit at the kitchen table finishing the last article. Go and greet them and let them know you're happy they're there. And while they are there, when the young mother gets up to change a diaper, or the father gets up to change, I'll take that. You finish your conversation with your father and I'll do that. So just bring a brief relief to their lives, and then all of a sudden they see it working. Us
having our priorities straight too. Yeah. And I always forget that. I think I want to just finish it, and yet is finishing that more important than the priority of giving them a welcome? You were going to say something about the economics there. About.
I guess what I guess what I was going to say is that it's not only a question of economic forces. I think I was thinking the same way that you were, but there's also a sense of values that comes into this whole thing. What do you put first? Oh, and I know what I was going to say too. That on that economics question, sometimes we think about that with respect to whether the mother or wife should work or not. It's also important for the husband, man of the house, to decide, is he going to work 60 or 70 hours a week in order to have more money and not be home? Or is he going to, not succeed quite so much as lawyer, businessman, farmer, whatever he may be? He's going to be satisfied with less, and we're going to have to take less, but I'm going to be around evenings, and I'm going to be part of this family. I'm not going to just be the winner out on the market and be an absentee parent. And that's all part of economics, and it's part of values too.
And it's a very hard thing, I think, to see clearly when you're young and want a lot and don't see so clearly. I think we're seeing a little bit clearly with hindsight, and I think it's hindsight is always 20/20, and foresight is 2200 or something. I wanted to talk a little bit about children, our children and your grandchildren. And there's a space here of like what has happened in, say, 20 or 5 or 30 years to American children. Are they different? Are children of these 1990s different than the children of 30, 40 years ago? I think that they're exactly the same, but I think that the pulls and the tugs and the pushes and the influences are different now than they were 30, 40 years ago, and I think it has had an effect. For example, I think, say, children's respect for authority today. I would say it was much more the rule 30, 40 years ago for children to have this automatic respect for adult authority, parental, teacher, adult in the community. Now, I think they certainly can be brought up with respect for adult authority and have very good manners, but I just see, day in, day out, that there seems to be less of that now. And I just, what is your perception on that? What have you noticed?
I think there's a lot more clutter in their lives that they have to deal with. And like on a radio broadcast, if you get a lot of static and you get a lot of jump and interference in your life, it's very hard to come to grips with the things that are meaningful in the direction that you need to achieve the meaningful goals and setting goals and all that sort of thing. So I think it is more difficult for them in the environment today and the milieu in which they live. But I don't think children are any different, and I think you find your same bright-eyed, conscientious, get up in the morning, know where they're going person, coming to grips with whatever dips and rises there are in his day, and realizing fulfillment at the end of that day. Maybe more guidance is needed.
Certainly, circumstances have changed to some extent, but there is a lot of truth to that. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree adage. And, I really think that regardless of circumstances outside of our homes, that children tend to have the value system that their parents have, if they really have it, because if you really have a good sense of values, you make that very, very apparent every day. Your neighbors all know it. Your kids know it better than your neighbors do. And they tend to embrace it, I think. Even though they may have more difficulty because of circumstances outside the house. But
I think there's a great lesson in that apple in the tree. Sometimes I think at a point in time when one of our children isn't perhaps doing quite what we hope they'd be doing at a point in time in their life, we wonder if the tree isn't planted on the side of the hill, and when the apple falls, it kind of rolls the way down. But with patience, you do see that bear out, because the values are there, and we have to remember our own lives. We didn't live them perfectly. We made mistakes, and we kind of slipped and slid,
You too?
Yes, for sure. Frank, before the program, we talked a little bit, and you had mentioned about a humorist, and we must keep our sense of humor in this parenting, grandparenting. You have a
Well, I
humorous...
guess I told you. I told you the story of our grandson, Frank, who's now 5, but when this occurrence happened, he was, it was a few months ago, he was 4. Frank is the oldest of 3 children who are the children of our son Pat and his wife, and they live on the Cape. But 3 or 4 months ago, they came to stay at just the kids, because parents were having a little holiday. So they came to our house to stay for 3 or 4 days, and the first night I sat on the sofa with Frank, and he was all cuddled up, and we were reading, and all of a sudden I feel a hand on my mouth, and he's pulling my gums apart, and he said, "Papa, how come you have a chocolate tooth?" And I said, "Frank, I don't have a chocolate tooth. Maybe, maybe a little vanilla, but it's not a chocolate tooth." So he just looked at me, and then we went back to the book, and that was the end of that, till about 2 days later. It came bath time at night, and I brought him upstairs, and he had his bath, and then we ran across the hall, and he popped up onto the bed and got himself all fixed up, and I started to sit down with the book I was going to read to him, and all of a sudden I hear this little guy say, "Once upon a time, there was this old man with white hair and a funny nose and a chocolate tooth." I got a kick out of that.
Well, children, unless we become like little children, we may not enter the kingdom of heaven. This is honesty and truth, I guess, that came out there. If you have a wart on your nose, they're going to tell you. That's one of the things, too, I think, that about grandparenting and parenting. The name of our program is Raising Children with God. And I think sometimes maybe in the busyness and the hectic schedule of young parents, they may not have time to take their child to God's house during the regular time, 9 to 5, weekdays. But grandparents maybe can find the time to teach a prayer, read a story in a children's Bible, take them to visit God in His house, and point out...
and let the youngster run around in the church, too, and get familiar with it, like it's nice here. I like it here.
We have a beautiful daughter who brings her daughter to church after her day work, and they come back together, daughter and mother, and they go down to the church every day. So the little 3-year-old comes and she wants to go to church. That's her routine, and she enjoys that, and that kind of becomes her day. But I think we're talking about grandparenting, and somebody said, well, where do you get your courage to? And I think you get your courage to grandparent very gradually, and you build your own track record, and you build your success, and you challenge yourself to the point that you feel you're able to. But I think we can all rest assured there's that great grandfather in the sky who will see that our efforts are successful, and that our goodwill and attitude and so forth is blessed, and certainly our children who are putting out the effort of being parents today are assuming a great role, and with his help they're going to be fine.
I think that's such a perfect note to end on. We're down to our last half minute here or so, but to ask God to help us as parents, to help grandparents, to help the children, the grandchildren, to show the belief and the faith and the power of prayer and the faith in God. And children do learn. They learn by what they see. They learn by example. And I'd like to thank you both very much for being here tonight and for talking about grandparenting and grandchildren. And we'll extend the conversation off camera. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for Shrewsbury Public Access Television for allowing us to do this.
Exactly. Absolutely.
We'll hopefully do more programs along this line. Thank you again.